Hey guys, happy GX June for the Mage of Ancients. Today, I'm bringing you my June 2019 update to my Ancient Gear deck profile. For those of you guys who have been longtime subscribers to this channel, you guys probably know by now that I love Ancient Gears. It's one of my favorite decks of all time. It may not be competitive, but I do see OTK potential in it, and I just still think that it's a pretty fun deck to play. Also, with the release of Dual Power, we finally got our hands on Platinum Gadget, which is a pretty decent boost to pretty much any machine-based deck out there. So I figured that it would be a good opportunity for me to include it in this deck build for you guys today. Before I get started with this deck profile update, if you guys enjoy deck profiles just like this and other Yu-Gi-Oh videos that I produce on this channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you stay updated. So with that being said, let's get started with this Ancient Gear deck profile update. Now, for those who are not familiar with the Ancient Gear archetype, basically a majority of the monsters in that archetype have effects where they prevent your opponent from activating monster effects, spells, or traps depending on which Ancient Gear monster is attacking. So, to start off, I run 3 copies of Ancient Gear Wyvern. This of course is one of your main starters of the deck. So, if this card is normal or special summon, then you can add one other Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand. That is any Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand except for Ancient Gear Wyvern. So yeah, and for the rest of the turn, you cannot set any cards at all. But that's not really gonna matter because this deck is really going second build. So afterwards, I run 2 copies of Ancient Gear Golem and 1 Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound. Ultimate Pound, personally, I like because if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, then you can discard a machine card and attack again in a row. Ancient Gear Golem, basically you're getting this out so that way you can set up for Ancient Gear Fusion, and I'll explain more about that later. But both these cards right here, Ancient Gear Golem and Ultimate Pound, can do piercing damage. But the disadvantage to Ultimate Pound is that it cannot prevent your opponent from activating spells or traps if it attacks. Golem, however, does that. You could prevent your opponent from activating spells or traps like Enemy Controller or Mirror Force if it attacks. Anyway, that's beside the point. Let me just go through the rest of my monsters. So afterwards, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Frame. This lets you search for Ancient Gear Golem or any spell from your deck to your hand that specifically lists Ancient Gear Golem in its text. At least that's what I think it does. Also, if it's destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon up to 3 Ancient Gear Golems or Ultimate Pounds from your hand, ignoring their summoning conditions. But that's not really going to happen as that doesn't happen as often as I'd like for it to happen. Anyway, Ancient Gear Box is basically here. If it's added from my graveyard or my deck to my hand, then I could search for an Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and or defense from my deck to my hand. So that's why Ancient Gear Frame is here as well. And then afterwards, I run Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. This is basically here only to be able to fusion summon with it, but mainly I'm here because of my special tech that I'm actually trying out, and I'll explain that later on in the video. Then afterwards, Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, and finally Ancient Gear Galvatron Dragon. This is the other card that I plan to bring out along with Hunting Hound. Being able to bring this out as well as one of these other cards at the same time, and since I'm running Cleave Genius as well, they can add another level 5 machine from my deck to my hand. And Galvatron Dragon is also here mainly because it's level 8 and it's a pretty good trade-in fodder. Next up, for those who have seen my previous deck profile updates, you guys probably know by now that I love running the Symphonic Warriors. So 3 guitar and 1 mics. I tried play testing with this without this engine and without the Predaplan engine, but I just realized that, you know what, I think one of the biggest downsides to Ancient Gears is that it has a hard time plussing. So I just want to be able to get that extra normal summon, so that way in case I already use this normal summon with Wyvern and I already have Frame in my hand, then I could just use Guitar and then activate it, discard a card, then special summon mics from my deck. So that way I can normal summon my Frame and then just do its thing from there. Afterwards, the last monsters that I'm running are the Kaijus, the level 8 Kaiju specifically. If you guys have seen my previous deck profile updates, I run specifically the level 8 Kaijus, Gameciel, Godarla, and Dogoran. This is, like I said, this is a going second based build. So if you happen to have one of these Kaijus in your hand, then you could just tribute over one of your opponent's problematic monsters, and just try and be able to continue your combos, and just try and break your opponent's board from there. Next up for your spells, I run 2 copies of Ancient Gear Fusion. I also run 2 copies of Ancient Gear Catapult, 2 Fortress, 1 Workshop, and finally 2 copies of Gear Town. Ancient Gear Fusion, it's actually pretty cool. It actually, ever since it debuted in the Legendary Duelist Ancient Millennium, I think that's what it's called, it actually lets you fusion summon an Ancient Gear monster using monsters from your deck as fusion material if you include an Ancient Gear Golem or Ultimate Pound that you control as fusion material. Catapult, it's meant to work in tandem with Fortress and Gear Town. Fortress is mainly there to grant immunity from your opponent's card effects to the Ancient Gear monsters that you control during the turn that they were normal or special summoned. Ancient Gear Workshop lets you bring back the Ancient Gear monsters that you basically discarded or that you already used up. Gear Town, it's there because you can normal summon 1 Ancient Gear monster for 1 less tribute, but you're mainly using Fortress and Gear Town to bring out Ancient Gear monsters from your hand, deck, or graveyard, depending on which card you're using. Catapult, a lot of people are saying that Gear Town and Catapult basically miss timing. However, I'm happy to say that Gear Town actually does not miss timing, because if you take a look at the first effect of Catapult, when you're targeting 1 face-up card you control, you're destroying it. It says here that you destroy it, and if you do, special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring summoning conditions. You can easily see that this effect the effect of Gear Town does not miss timing because of the phrase "and if you do," meaning that destroy it and special summoning an Ancient Gear monster, both of those effects happen at the same time. So if the timing falls perfectly well with Gear Town in order to activate Gear Town's effect. I did say near the beginning of the video that I'm actually trying out a new tech that works well with Cleave Genius to add another machine monster from my deck to my hand. So that special tech that I'm trying out is Urgent Schedule. So you can special summon a level 4 or lower machine, as well as a level 5 or higher Earth Machine monster from your deck, and in defense position, and you negate their effects. So like I said, if you have Cleave Genius on the field and you activate Urgent Schedule, and you special summon both your Ancient Gear monsters to the zones that Cleave Genius points to, then you can add 1 more level 5 or higher machine monster, and that's pretty cool. Afterwards, like I already showed you guys, I'm running Kaiju, so I decided to include 2 Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. Then afterwards, 2 Overload Fusion, 2 Terraforming. Overload Fusion, of course, is to bring out your Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. 2 Mystical Space Typhoon. I don't like Twin Twisters because you basically need your Ancient Gear monsters in order to fusion summon with. Then afterwards, 2 Trade-In because I'm running level 8s. And finally, 1 copy of Monster Reborn. And finally, my extra deck. Of course, I run 2 copies of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. This is basically your primary win condition of the deck. So what's really cool about Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, especially in this format, is that it's unaffected by spells and traps. So what happens is that, in this format, there's cards like Salon Great Rage that your opponent can activate in order to pop your own monsters. There's also Super Polymerization, which is actually back at 2 now. Who knows when it's going to get off the ban list. Anyway, my point is that this, like I said, this card is unaffected by spells and traps. So even if your opponent tries to use Super Polymerization on this, they can't because it's unaffected. Also, if your opponent cannot activate monster effects until the end of the battle phase. When you enter the battle phase with this card on the field, it doesn't have to attack. It just prevents all your opponent's monsters from activating effects in the battle phase. It also does piercing damage, and this card can attack all monsters that your opponent controls once each. I also have Ancient Gear Megaton Golem. It gains attacks depending on the number of Ancient Gear Golems that you use for its fusion summon. Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, it also does pretty well. It actually has 4,400 attack, so that's pretty good. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention, if this card is leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon your Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem from your extra deck for free. At least that's what I think. Yeah, that's what it is. And Ancient Gear Howitzer, it doesn't happen too often, but it is there just because I want to be able to get something much more powerful on the field. And yeah, you guys can bump it up to 2 if you want to. Then afterwards, the only XYZ monsters that I run are Gear Gigant X, so I can add a level 4 machine monster from my deck or graveyard to my hand. Diamond Dire Wolf to pop cards on the field. And Tornado Dragon has the quick effect to pop a spell or trap on the field. Yeah, so yeah, those are the XYZ monsters that I run. This extra deck is totally up to you. You can adjust it any way that you'd like to. So for the Link monsters, I run Underclock Taker, Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus. Most of these Link monsters are basically generic. So like I said, like the other extra deck monsters that I have, you can choose whichever Link monsters you can run. Platinum Gadget. This is actually something that I was looking forward to for a long time. If this card is Link summoned, you can special summon one level 4 or lower machine monster from your hand to a zone that this card points to. Like I said before, you just want to be able to plus. So I'm just really glad that I get to include this in this deck. Cleave Genius, like I said, this is here so that way you can plus off of it if you have Urgent Schedule. And finally, Decode Talker, pretty good Link 3. And finally, Borolo Dragon. So that's it for this deck profile, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what other deck profiles you guys would like to see. And of course, I will also be coming out with some more GX June videos later this month. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video and you want to help support the channel, then be sure to hit that like button. And if you guys haven't so already, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you stay updated on my latest Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you again.